This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by ICOM. Heard it, worked it, logged it. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information about ICOM radios.
It's Ham Radio.
Good evening, everyone. It's Ham Talk Live, episode number 245. The Voice of America Museum Virtual Tours, stories from Bethany Station, recorded live on Thursday, February 4th, 2021. I'm your host, Neil Rapps. My call sign is WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we're joined by Jack Dominic, the Executive Director of the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting, and we'll take your calls live in a little while. Last week, Dr. Scott Wright, K0MD, was here to talk about COVID research results for hams. He gave us an update on his convalescent plasma study and how hams helped out with that study. So if you missed that show, you can listen anytime at hamtalklive.com or on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, or you can catch the rebroadcast of Ham Talk Live on WTWW. That's 5085 AM Saturday afternoons at about 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, again, several announcements here. The AM rally is this weekend, so get on AM on 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, 10, and 6 meters, and that starts actually tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, which is 0000 UTC. And then it runs through 2 a.m. on Monday, which is 700 UTC on Monday. So just get on AM on any radio, whether it's vintage or the new fancy stuff, and get on and talk on AM. Next weekend, Orlando Hamcation's special edition will be taking place from 10 until 4 Eastern Time at hamcation.com. You can sign up for the webinars. They will also have their QSO party on that day, Saturday the 13th, from 10 until 10, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday the 13th. And the webinars will take place on the 13th and the 14th. So make sure you check that out. And then also coming up in the future, March 13th and 14th, the QSO Today Ham Expo will return. Early bird tickets are $10. They've just added air meat to facilitate some more interaction. What this does is it provides a virtual lounge with tables and chairs to do live video hallway meetups, so you can visit with people, and the exhibitors will have some demos and answer questions and take orders with the live video, and there'll be some lounges scattered throughout just to go talk with people. So if you're interested in the virtual Ham Expo, early bird tickets are $10. All right, well, get your questions ready to go. If you're listening to us live on Thursday night, you can call us after the interview by telephone. I'll give you the number so you can have it handy. It's not time to call just yet, but we'll give you the phone number, and we'll do that several times throughout the evening. It's 859-982-7373. Again, 859-982-7373. 7373. You can also tweet us. It's at Ham Talk Live on Twitter. If you're listening to us on the Spreaker, you can type in the comments, and I'll be checking those throughout the evening as well. And I'll be back with Jack right after this word from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live.
Jerry, what's up, man? I haven't seen you at Sunbucks in a while. I used to see you every morning getting coffee. What's up?
Well, I can't afford Sunbucks 5 days a week anymore. I had to spend my money on PL259s. You know, those antenna projects I've been meaning to do. I had to do them before my HOA finds out I have antennas.
That's too bad, Jerry. I miss seeing you and catching up over coffee. You should get your PL259s from Tower Electronics. They have great stuff. Jerry, you're back. Oh, QRM Heterodyne Frappuccino. That's a good choice. How's it going? Did you get all those antennas up before the HOA police showed up?
Yeah, I got them all done. Thanks for telling me about Tower Electronics. Now I can have my coffee. I just saved a bunch of money on my PL259s by switching to Tower Electronics.
Don't get caught without PL259s. Visit Tower Electronics online at pl-259.com or at a Hamfest near you. Or give them a call at 920-435-2973. And be sure to pick up some power poles, adapters, and cables too.
Right now, you could be taking a de-expedition to North Korea and work the pile-up of the century. But instead, you've decided to listen to Ham Talk Live. We thank you. And now, here's Neil Rapp with more of the show.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. Thanks to Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show. They are planning on being at Dalton, Georgia, assuming that Hamfest is still going on February 27th. But you can visit them anytime online at pl-259.com. Well, welcome back to Ham Talk Live. Tonight, Jack Dominic joins us on the Orlando Amateur Radio Club and Hamcation Zoom line. Jack is the executive director of the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting in Westchester, Ohio. Jack worked for 37 years at PBS station WCET-TV, doing everything from station manager to executive vice president, chief operating officer, tech blog writer, and marketing director. And now he's working full-time to keep the stories from the Voice of America Bethany Station alive and well for generations to come. So, Jack, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Oh, Neil, it is a pleasure. It's always great to talk about the Voice of America.
Well, I really enjoy the museum, and I enjoy seeing you over there when I can. It seems like it's been forever with all this COVID stuff going on. But I just fell in love with the place, and we've been sharing a lot of things about it on this show from time to time, and I was really encouraged to see some emails here recently because the doors have been closed for a lot of the past year, not all of it, but for a lot of it, and there was already some talk, I know, of heading in a more virtual direction. And being closed just kind of made that a little more important. So this new video series allows people to visit the museum that, can't visit the museum right now because it's closed, but may not be able to ever visit because of the distance. So tell us a little bit about this series and exactly why this video series is being done for these virtual tours.
Well, thanks. We were going to do the tours, the video tours anyway, but as you said, with the COVID situation, we've had to be closed, the majority of, all of this year so far, and a great part of last year, obviously. And that's due to a couple things. First of all, we're essentially an all-volunteer organization. I'm the only guy that gets money to be there. everybody is a volunteer. And, all of our tour guides, our docents are volunteers. And many of those folks are retired. And it's not at all surprising that, you don't want to be out in a crowd of people at a museum if you can help it. So the video series was always on our mind to just kind of give we try to keep them as short, 3 minutes max, maybe 3.5 minutes, of one element. Maybe it's a display or a person or some thing about the museum that may be interesting and also can be told in a very short time. So we started off, and we've got two that have been. We're doing them about twice a month. First part of the month and the middle of the month. So just last Monday we released one, and we will release another one toward the middle of February, and keep going that way, two a month. But the videos are not meant to replace a visit, although, I guess if you watched enough of them, eventually we'll get to most of the exhibits. But as you said, Neil, the Voice of America Bethany Station, just north of Cincinnati, is perhaps, it's not perhaps, it is perhaps the most important historical record of the Voice of America, which was and is still very, very important to many millions of people around the world.
And we've got some cool stories that we want to talk about how important that is to people around the world. We'll do that here,
sure,
in a little bit. But if people want to tune in and watch these videos, how do they do that? How do they go on a virtual tour?
It's pretty simple. You just go to our website, which is easy, VOA Museum. That's one word, voamuseum.org. And right up at the top, one of the things, visit the museum, and you'll click on that, and we're going to library them as we put them out. Also, if you are on our mailing list, and many of your listeners perhaps are, each month you'll get a notice that there's a video, and actually we give you a link, so you don't even have to go to the website. If you're interested in getting on our email list, really simple. Just go to the website, and there's an area where it says contact, and you just fill in your name, and we'll add you to the list.
Yeah, that's where I saw them. I knew they were coming, but when I knew they were out when the emails arrived. So it's always good to sign up for that and be able to get notice that, hey, a new one is up and running. So give it a little bit of an idea, to folks out there listening, why was this important? Why should they go out and watch these videos? If you had to twist somebody's arm, what would you say?
Well, I think to understand the impact of the Voice of America, a lot of people don't know anything about the Voice of America. And that shouldn't be surprising because it wasn't for us. It wasn't aimed at us. And as you know, and your listeners know perhaps better than most, shortwave radio in the United States, unlike the rest of the world, really never took off except for the hobbyist area. But the Voice of America's impact around the world can't be understated. And some of the stories we're talking about, for instance, the first video that we put out was on the Volksempfänger. How do you like that? My German isn't all that very good. But the Volksempfänger was a radio. Now, your listeners will all remember from their study of history that Hitler and Goebbels and all of those folks had a keen understanding of the importance of propaganda. And Goebbels is quoted as saying the radio is going to be extremely and the dominant source of information. He was well ahead of the curve. So they embraced radio, but they were also afraid of radio. Radio, as you know, doesn't have fences, or at least not easily fenced in or fenced out. But what they did is they developed a radio called the Bolzenfanker, and they did a couple things. First of all, they made sure that it was affordable. Now, radios back then, now we're in the late 30s, early 40s. They were expensive. So they made them inexpensive. And one of the ways they did that is they made them not very sensitive so that they were unable to pick up BBC or later on the Voice of America or almost any other Western radio station. Now, during this period, the Nazis had 68 radio stations in Germany constantly beaming out Hitler's fake news and into the Bolzenfanker. So the Bolzenfanker, not perhaps, is the reason that Voice of America was created, because President Roosevelt says, they're doing one heck of a job getting their message out. Not a good message, but they're doing a darn good job of getting it out. What can we do? And that's what prompted his idea of building out high-power radio transmitters here in the United States, capable of putting signals into Europe, North Africa, and South America. South America was extremely important. If you remember your history, Hitler kept saying, if we rile people up in South America, maybe the Americans will pay more attention down there and pay no attention to what's going on in Europe. That was one of the things he was trying to do. But anyway, so that the Bolzenfanker, that radio, spawned the whole concept of the Voice of America, and ultimately Bethany Station, because Bethany Station, where the museum is, was the first transmission facility for the Voice of America. Now, a lot of people will say, they study their history and they say, wait a minute, didn't the Voice of America start in 1942, but you didn't build the building until and get on the air until 44? Well, the answer to that is yes. But if you've been to the Bethany Station, and Neil, you know what is down the street, don't you?
Oh, I do.
Yes.
This beautiful, beautiful tower.
That's right. And that tower was WLW. Now, across the street from that tower, that's not there any longer, was some other towers, some rhombics. And we all, or many of your listeners, will recognize WLW as the AM powerhouse that Powell Crosley built in Cincinnati, and at one time operated at 500,000 watts, making it the most powerful AM station, legally operating. I must say. And
by the way, let me interject this real quick too. Don't get any ideas, folks, about the AM rally this weekend. 1,500 watts is the max. Sorry. Had to throw that in there.
I do have this transmitter down in the basement. I could be bought. I'm not sure I want to pay the electric bill, though.
Yeah.
But anyway, across the street was WLWO. When Roosevelt decided he wanted to build transmitters that could reach those, Europe especially, a lot of folks said it couldn't be done, except this guy in Cincinnati said, well, we're already doing it. Crosley was already operating WLWO shortwave and sending programming to Europe. So the first broadcasts of Voice of America were not from Bethany Station, but they were from a tower about half a mile away. Bethany Station, of course, wasn't finished yet. So these are the go ahead.
And
these
I
are
remember.
The story.
Oh, okay. We're doubling here. I remember, the Bethany Station being that place that we drove by going to the Dayton Hamvention on 75 that had miles and miles of wires strung out, and your AM radio would just go nuts. It would just desense the radio so bad that you couldn't hear anything on any frequency, and that was it. But there are these stories like this that still have some meaning, and,
right.
and you can come
right.
in and see all of these things and learn about them at the museum.
What is I think really it's very emotional. We get people at the museum when we're open, and we'll hopefully be back open in the spring. People come to Cincinnati and then they find out, wait a minute, isn't that where Bethany Station, these people coming from other countries, we'll have people walking in the front door with tears in their eyes. And each of them relates a different story. I listened, in my grandfather's attic because we weren't allowed to listen. The government wouldn't allow us to listen. Or that's where I learned English. Or that's where I learned that I wanted to move to the United States. The stories are amazing. There's some really emotional ones, and there's some funny ones as well.
Let's talk about one of those, because you've got the blanket radio video, and
right.
Some of the stories that I know that I've heard from docents of people coming in and saying, I had one of those blanket radios. That was the only way that we had any kind of news. So talk about
exactly.
some of those stories of people coming in.
That's exactly like the video that we just released. It's called the Under the Blanket Radio. And what that means, I guess it's been about 4 years. I was sitting in the office, and a gentleman and his wife came to the front door and knocked on the door during the week. We weren't open during that time, but I went down and I greeted him and I said, I'm sorry, we're not open right now. We'll be open this weekend. He said, no. I don't want to see the museum. I want to give you something. And he presented me with a plastic radio, transistor radio, that he purchased when he lived in Ukraine. He and his wife were Ukrainian. They had since moved to the United States. And it was a pretty standard radio. I mean, you probably have one in your garage you listen to the baseball game on. Nothing special. In fact, it was kind of beat up. And he could tell from my expression that, Neil, you've been to our facility. We don't need another radio.
Yeah. We have a few.
We have a few. But then he said, you don't understand. And then he relates this story. He said, I bought this radio when we lived in Ukraine. It was manufactured in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And it was designed such that it didn't have the capacity to listen. Remember the Volksempfänger? It didn't have the capacity to pick up easily the Voice of America or any Western station. He said, then he had this gleam in his eye and he said, but I knew a guy. And his wife relates that there was a gentleman in their village who rewired all these radios for people so they could listen. And she said, we called them the Under the Blanket Radio because you weren't allowed to listen to Western broadcasts, especially the Voice of America. But Felix says that's the only place we would ever find what was really going on. We had another guy come in one time, and he said, "Yeah, in the Soviet Union, airplanes never crash. Crops are always good." Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there are just tons of emotional stories, and then your story about driving to Dayton and losing, your radio and all of that. I mean, there are so many funny stories. And we had a gentleman come in the museum last probably in September, I guess we were open. And he was from across the street from Bethany Station. He went to the church over there. Okay. Well, that church was built when Bethany Station was still in operation. But it was when they were building the church, the engineers from Bethany Station went across the street and met with the construction people and said, "Would you like us to help you with your PA system?" You know where this is.
Oh, I know.
You know where this is going.
Exactly where it's going.
So anyway, no. We know exactly what we're doing. Well, thank you very much. Okay. So see you later. Well, of course, the first time the church opened, they were right smack dab in the path of our South American transmitter, which fired up at noon. Okay. Well, the pastor was still preaching, but he was speaking Spanish. But the funny part of that is of course they fixed it eventually. But the gentleman who still goes to that church and remembered this, okay, he said, "We love the Voice of America because we knew that the pastor could never speak after noon.
After 12.
So he said the service was always over and we were always at the restaurants before all the other churches."
Yeah, that's not the only story I know kind of similar to that.
There's lots of
church next door to an AM station, and they're getting ready to do their Christmas program, and they bring up the lights and bring up the audio, and all of a sudden they hear, "And this, bud, for you."
Oh yeah.
And and if you visit the ham shack, ham shack at the museum, you'll notice that there's an extra tuner on every radio. That's because WLW is a half mile away.
But seriously, though, that we are making great strides. We're in construction right now. We're building a new exhibit hall, new meeting facilities, etc. And it is. I apologize. I should have turned that down. The building is just a marvelous facility. And to see what the engineers were able to do, you have to remember that in 1942, when you were building a transmitter, especially a 250,000-watt transmitter, you didn't go down to Radio Shack and pick up parts. These early transmitters were built screw by screw, wire by wire, coil by coil, for this facility, designed and built right there. The only pieces that were not built in Cincinnati were the tubes, and they were manufactured by Federal over on the East Coast. But everything else was put together in Cincinnati. And when I say put together, I mean that. And then, of course, the design of the antenna field that you talk about, which was when we were in operation, was 1 square mile, 20 plus rhombic antennas, plus a curtain antenna for Europe. And just all of those antennas, that design of those antennas, they were called reentrant rhombics. And your more adroit transmitter people will understand that. And interestingly enough, the specifications for those antennas were considered a top secret well into after the Cold War.
Yeah, it was a sight to see, and you can still see the tower legs. You can't see the whole antenna, and it would have made a great
Right.
160 meter antenna, but oh well.
But we do have, as you know, we have the diorama, as you know, that we built to show how that looked.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to take a break right now. We're going to come back and we're going to take some questions, and we're going to talk more about some of the renovations and things that are going on, and a little more about the virtual tours at the Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting when we come back after this word from ICOM America right here on Ham Talk Live. Love is on the air at ICOM with this sweetheart of a package. It's the IC705, the perfect sidekick for hams that like to enjoy what both the great indoors and outdoors have to offer. It's the perfect QRP companion, base station features and functionality at the tip of your fingers in a portable package covering HF 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in at just over 2 pounds with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. It has a 4.3-inch color touchscreen with live band scope and waterfall, runs 5 watts with a battery, 10 watts with a power supply, CW, AM, FM sideband, full D-Star functions, a micro USB connector, Bluetooth, wireless LAN, integrated GPS, a micro SD card slot, and a speaker mic. Comes standard, and it supports QRP and QRP portable operations. And the perfect accessory for the 705 is the now available optional backpack, LC192, with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories for soda activations or just a day in the park. Some other accessories include a QRP portable magnetic antenna, a standard battery, a lithium-ion battery pack, micro USB cable, USB-C to micro USB cable, a DC power cable, a compact lapel push-to-talk Bluetooth with earphone, a desktop tray, and the antenna tuner is coming soon. And there's free software available to download, the programming software, the Android app, the terminal mode access point mode application, and the smartphone picture utility for Android, iOS, and Windows. And the RSBA1 IP remote control software is sold separately. Visit ICOMAmerica.com/amateur for more information on ICOM radios.
Join the conversation. Give us a call at 859-982-7373. Again, the number to call is 859-982-7373. Or, if you'd rather type than talk, tweet us at Ham Talk Live. Now, here's Neil Rapp with more Ham Talk Live.
Here's the snap. Rapp takes the rig. He breaks through the pileup. He's on 80. Now 40. Now 20. 15. 10. 2 meters. Touchdown. Ham Talk Live.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. Thanks to ICOM America for sponsoring the show. Check them out at ICOMAmerica.com/amateur and check out Ham Talk Live every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at HamTalkLive.com. And also, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And before we go back to Jack and take some of your questions, it's time, yes, once again, for the Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week within 9 GSU.
Now it's time for the Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week, the part of the show where Rick tells us a ham radio joke. The Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week is brought to you by QRM Labs. Now, here's Rick Garrett in 9 GSU with today's Ham Talk Live Joke of the Week.
Talking to a fella on the local repeater yesterday, and I said, "You sound just like Bill Withers." And he said, I know.
This has been the Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week with Rick Garrett in 9 GSU. Tune in again next week for another joke from Rick.
Oh, I know. I know. Yeah. And look out next week. I just got it, the one for next week earlier today, and oh my goodness. So thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. 859-982-7373 is the phone number. We're here with Jack Dominic, the executive director of the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting. So if you have a question, now is the time to call. It's 859-982-7373, or you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live. Or you can type in the comments on Spreaker, and if you're listening to us on WTWW shortwave or on the podcast edition, you won't be able to reach us live since we're doing this on Thursday. We do have a couple of questions that came in on Twitter here. So first off, let's talk about Jacob, KG7EQN, who would like to know, do you have any recommendations on books to read about the VOA?
Perhaps the most academic, if you were really into the history and the geopolitical impact, etc., is a book by a gentleman by the name of Alan Heil, and it's called Voice of America, a VOA History. You can get that on, it's HEIL, by the way, and I noticed it is available on Amazon, which, by the way, I was surprised because I thought it was out of print, but apparently it is available. If you want something a little bit lighter reading, there is a section in Rusty McClure's book about Powell Crosley Jr., and that's Crosley, the two brothers. Again, that's available on Amazon as well. Crosley and the Voice of America are really joined at the hip, as we discussed before. Bethany Station is in northern Cincinnati for one reason and one reason only, and that's where the expertise for building high-power antennas resided back in the early 1940s, and they resided at the Crosley Corporation, headed by Powell Crosley.
All right, and then Lloyd, KC5FM, wants to know, when did VOA start and why? And I know we got some of that.
We touched it
already, but
very simply, sure, very simply, 1942, President Roosevelt wanted to combat the Nazi propaganda, lies, fake news. He called some people together in Washington, D.C. from NBC, Mutual, CBS, all the big radio folks, and then a small radio guy in Cincinnati by the name of Powell Crosley. Called them all to Washington, D.C. and said, what would it take to build out a system of transmitting into Europe especially, and then North Africa and then South America, so we can get our messages out. Now, it's really interesting. If you read the literature, and I believe it's in Alan's book, there were many engineers in Washington, D.C., with the federal government that said this thing had to be in Greenland in order to do it. Well, apparently they discussed that at this meeting, and gentleman in the back of the room kind of raised his hand and said, excuse me, but we're already doing it. And that, of course, was the Crosley tie-in. But that's 1942. Interestingly enough, Voice of America was very, very important during World War II. There's no doubt about that. But it was more important during the Cold War, and probably had more of an impact during the Cold War for a variety of reasons. First of all, the number of radios, for a normal person to have a radio, et cetera. And then, of course, the fact that getting reliable information, if you happen to live in one of the Soviet states, was hard to come by.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a little more about that, Lloyd. So thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, Jacob, for your questions. And we have a caller on the line, so let's see who we have on the phones. Good evening. Welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Good evening, gentlemen. Hello, Neil. Great. This is my first time listening to you guys, but I appreciate it. I'm a longtime shortwave listener. I also wound up with a great career since retired as a transmitter engineer, both with the NBC networks. I got shipped all around the country to help the affiliates, as well as full-time with the old RKO General WOR, and worked with a bunch of guys who were Armstrong engineers just towards the end of their careers. Quick question. So over the years, did VOA do any frequency shifting regarding the signals into Russia, Soviet Union, as they began their jamming techniques?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact,
how quick did you guys do that?
Well, that's pretty interesting. The early Crosley transmitters, okay, the first ones put in, took forever to switch frequencies. I mean, like 15 or 20 minutes. But the new Collins transmitters that were put in were very agile and within a few seconds. Now, of course, you also had antenna issues that had to be addressed. But no, the jamming was a big deal, and there were many different ways of going about that. A very interesting one, if you come to the museum, we have a display of the United States Coast Guard cutter Courier. Does that ring a bell to you of anything?
It does, yes, sir. I also, when I got out of school, I worked with an organization at Fort Meade in Maryland, so I have an idea.
Well, what the Courier was, the Courier was a Coast Guard cutter, not a cutter, a Coast Guard ship that was anchored in the harbor off the coast of Greece, and it received signals from Bethany Station, received them, and then retransmitted them with a high-power AM transmitter on board right into the heart of the Soviet Union.
No kidding. We had a repeater on board a ship.
We had a repeater, and early on, the way they received it was by taking a barrage balloon from, the World War II barrage balloons. That was the antenna. Now later on, they did build a receiving station on land, but there was a lot of politics. You might say, why in the heck did they do this in a ship? Well, the Greeks didn't want it on their land because they didn't want to get the Soviets upset. Originally, the United States said, well, we'll send a Navy ship. And they said, no. A Navy ship is a ship of war. A Coast Guard ship is not a ship of war. So, I mean, there's all kinds of political intrigue and that went into that. But the Courier is a great example. The broadcast, yes, but the whole business of shifting, the Courier actually just, I forget the strength of the transmitters, but it was an AM transmitter, directional right up into the belly of the Soviet Union. In fact, I often wondered whether or not Felix's radio was the one that picked it up.
Interesting. Well, gentlemen, everybody stay healthy. You guys all stay healthy, and we'll see you on the radio.
All right.
Come visit the museum sometime.
Yeah, if you ever come visit the museum, this may be something that's a little more technical on this, but there's some really cool technical stuff in that control room.
Great.
About how they changed frequencies and what they did to change frequencies so fast. So if you get a chance, you need to come check that out. It's very cool.
Well, Yeah, I'm glad that that you guys are still keeping the history, and I'm also thrilled that we finally have Voice of America News back in where it should be. So you all have a really, and I hope that you guys, again, like I said, stay healthy. We're up here in the high country in Arizona on the desert. You want to talk about great reception? There's nothing in my way. Gentlemen, enjoy. Have a great one.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate it. And if you go to Hamvention, that's
Neil,
always a good
care.
time to visit. It's always a good little side trip if you go to Hamvention. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Neil, one of the things I wanted to say while I was thinking of it is that the museum is really an important part of history, and the Ham Club that actually is at the museum, the Westchester Amateur Radio Association, and of course the members of that Ham Club have really been critical to the development of the museum, not only from the ham side of the business, but just overall the support that they give on a daily basis to the museum is outstanding. So the ham community around the United States should be extremely proud of what their folks are doing here in Cincinnati.
It's a great group of people, and proud to be a part of them. Well, let's talk a little bit. We're already over time, but I want to talk a little bit about the renovations that are going on, because things are closed down, but you've got a lot of things going on right now. So let's talk a little bit about the renovations that are going on before we sign off here.
Sure. Very, very quickly. We have a 1944 building that was built to withstand a direct hit. In other words, you don't do a lot of. It's pretty solid. I mean, when you have 18-inch concrete walls between offices. But anyway, the building was never, ever built to have people in it. I mean, other than the operators. And as a museum where you need to have people who can, accessibility, et cetera, just, it was a disaster. There's steps, there's curbs, there's, there are more floors. You would think it's only like a 3-story building, but, when you get to the levels, it's probably a 10-story building. Well, anyway, the bottom line is that in order to make it accessible for people who may have mobility issues, you can't have all these steps and curbs, etc. So we're in the process of building out a new entrance, a secondary entrance. Pardon me, excuse me. I don't have a cough button on my mic. We're building a new entrance, new restrooms. When the building was built, well, first of all, when the building was built, I don't want to sound sexist, but they didn't worry about women's bathrooms. I mean, we didn't have any women there, and obviously you didn't have to have a bathroom that a wheelchair or a walker could come in, because people who were in wheelchairs and walkers didn't go to work. All of those things have to be addressed. So we're in the process of putting in new ADA compliant restrooms. We're leveling all the floors, getting away from all of the barriers. We're building a brand new meeting room that can be used for exhibits, for community organizations to meet, receptions, our own lecture series, etc. And all of this is going on right now, which right now the building has got more plaster and concrete dust. I'm kind of glad we're not open. But that's all going on. And with a little luck, we'll be done with that when we really, get back to being normal.
Yeah, whatever that's going to look like.
That's right.
Well, Jack, you've been a wealth of information here tonight, and appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk about some of these things that are going on while things are shut down, and these videos, so that, if you are out in Arizona and you can't make it to the museum, you can check out what's going on. And if you want a little preview and see if, that's, a trip you want to take, or again, for the ham radio operators, always mention Hamvention Weekend, because if, you can do two things in one trip, you can kind of see what to expect and see if that's, something that you would want to visit. So, I think this, virtual tour is a really cool thing, and, I'm glad that you were able to come on and share that with us tonight.
Well, thank you for letting us get the message out, and we're always open online, so feel free to go to voamuseum.org, and if you want to be on our mailing list, and we promise not to bombard you with a lot of junk mail, so feel free to sign up, and we'll get you on our mailing list.
All right. Thanks so much, Jack.
All right. You have a good day.
You too. And that is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. Thanks to my guest, Jack Dominic, from the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting in Westchester, Ohio. That's voamuseum.org. And everybody out there in cyberspace for listening and calling in and typing in. And I invite you back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, when Tim Helming, WT1IM, will be here to talk about the COM Academy. It's a communications academy for emergency communications, but it's going to be virtual this year. So we'll take a look at that next week. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, visit hamtalklive.com. And before we go, we want to announce again the t-shirt giveaway. We're giving away some free t-shirts out of the reviews that are left on iTunes throughout February. So sometime in February, get on iTunes, search Ham Talk Live, click on the logo, scroll down, and hit write a review. Leave a review. Make sure you leave your call sign there so I can get a hold of you if you win. And we're going to give away some t-shirts this month. So that's your chance to win some free stuff. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.